Welcome to the Nightly News Podcast. We are so fortunate today to be joined by our monthly visitor, Adrienne Thoman, Student Activities Director. Welcome, Adrienne.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, also being joined by one of our Nightly News Media Club members, a veteran now to the podcast, Mr. Darren Green. Darren, welcome.
Hey, welcome.
So what we're going to do today is we always do have a similar sort of format when we have Adrienne down. And of course, we are going to get to Adrienne's featured 3 events of June, but we're also going to talk about another couple of events outside of that and talk about, maybe it's a little bit of their background, how we can go about signing up or RSVPing to these events, and also talking about some of the reasons why getting involved on campus is going to be so important. The first thing that I want to talk about is our Clubs and Activities Banquet. That's coming up on Thursday, June the 1st at 12 o'clock in the Conference Center. And this is for clubs and athletics. Adrienne, how long has this been around, and what is the purpose of this event?
So believe it or not, this is only the second year for this event. We are continuing to improve and expand it, but the goal of it is really to celebrate all of the amazing things that our student leaders and our student athletes are doing. They do so much here on campus and in the community, and it's really just all about them, to let them know that they're rock stars.
Now, when you came up with this idea last year, and obviously the Media Club was a part of it, what were some of the things that you wanted to make sure? Because there is a program. It's not just necessarily, hey, thanks for your good job, here's a nice meal. There was also a lot more to it. Can you talk about some of the initiatives that you wanted to start with, and maybe some of the awards that are given out?
Sure. So we really wanted to start by recognizing, first of all, things like academic success. We have students that qualify as All-American because of their academic achievements here on campus. And they're doing that while they're balancing all of the commitments of being on a club, being a student leader, playing on a team. That's not, those things take a good bit of time. So they really need to maximize how they're balancing that. And they do a great job of it. We also have awards for community service and all the great things that they're doing there. Teams like, our baseball team just recently, they did a dunk booth to raise money for Night Quest, and there are plenty of other examples, but we want to celebrate what they're doing in the community as well. One
of the things that we've tried to work with in the Nightly News is to try to find some of these community organizations out there, and I think that that's one of the undersold things about being in a club is being able to get out, and yes, our students do have a requirement of doing some community service, but also can you talk about how doing community service as a group, a club, or an organization, how that might actually enhance the whole community service process?
Well, it is great to be able to do it as a club or a team because you're able to do that with an entire group, to put all of your forces together. It's one thing, I truly believe we all have the ability to make a difference as single solo people, but there's something to be said for when you pull together as a team and make things happen. It just allows that project to get so much bigger, to just grow so much more than you would have thought possible. I think of when Colleges Against Cancer got involved with Bras Across Campus. Here's an event that's positioned to encourage breast cancer awareness for young women, because unfortunately breast cancer is not just something that affects women of all ages. So part of that message is, hey, you may be in college, but this is something you need to be aware of too. It started with one person with an idea, and then she got an entire campus involved, and to see how that message grew. So I definitely encourage all of our students to take advantage of some of the opportunities and some of the initiatives that are happening within our clubs and teams.
Darren, I wanted to ask you a question, being that you are a relatively new member of the Nightly News, but I believe this is your 3rd term now that you've been with us. What has being with the Nightly News Media Club meant to you personally and maybe professionally?
It meant a lot because I know before I came here, I looked up the club and I was like, oh my goodness, this is something I want to get into. And I heard that y'all have the podcast, and I love talking. Not talking, but I love doing podcasts. I think it's fun. It's something that I want to do. So
it is talking, though.
It is. So it just meant a lot to me to be a part of it. I take it very serious.
Oh, no, that's clear. It's funny. We had a guest speaker in class recently and was talking about some of the advantages of being with the club. And it's really cool and unique, and I'm glad that you were there because you were able to see firsthand, hey, when Professor Miller says about the advantages of joining a club, he's not just making this stuff up.
Yeah.
Now you're getting somebody from the community coming out and telling you how important being with the club is. So I appreciate your efforts, and you have managed to come in. And to be perfectly honest with you, Darren, I'm pretty sure that leadership is in your future in the club because, some of our leaders currently are they have maybe another year. And then after that, it's all a torch passing type of thing, and you're already making a very positive impression. Yes. And that's going to go a long way on your resume. I just want to recap real quick this event, and then we'll come back with some of the other events. We are talking about the Clubs and Athletics Banquet that's going to be in the Central Penn Conference Center. It's going to be Thursday, June the 1st from 12 to 1:30. Now, Adrienne, if somebody is in a club, or maybe if a student isn't even in a club and maybe wants to support a fellow club member, or if a faculty or staff member would like to join us during this occasion, how would they go about doing so?
Just get in touch with me. The easiest way is to shoot me an email at adriennethoman@centralpenn.edu or stop by my office and just let me know. I'll add you to the guest list.
Sounds fantastic. Another event that we actually on a recent podcast talked about, we had Rabina Azizdin in on our last episode, and she talked a little bit more about the Business Partner of the Year breakfast. While I know, and I think Rabina did an excellent job covering the ins and outs of the event, can you just give us some of your feedback on why students should be a part of these career services events, even if they're only freshmen or sophomore and not thinking about a job for maybe another year or two?
You know what? That year goes fast. And when you are in a situation like the Business Partner of the Year breakfast, you are able to network with, now granted, not just any companies. These are companies and businesses that have a direct connection to our college and want to support our students. That's why they're being there. That's why they're being recognized. Some really, really great places that have welcomed our students with open arms, have provided internships, and have supported us in so many ways. So every opportunity our students have to get in there, to connect with them, to say, hey, my name's Darren and I am a rock star podcast interviewer. Yeah, so every opportunity you have, you should take advantage of it.
One of the things, too, that I try to talk about, obviously I'm a huge advocate of career services. I've been working with them for quite some time. I try to explain to the students in even my freshman seminar classes, it's their first term here on campus, how important it is to have a relationship with career services throughout your time here. A major misconception that even I had when I was in school was that, we don't need career services until we're getting into our junior and senior year, because that's when we're preparing to make this next step. The problem is, on our campus, they're constantly doing events every single term and trying to put us in touch and be able to network with some of these people who, as you mentioned, they're here for a reason. We are recognizing businesses that are giving our students opportunity, and that's what I want our students to understand. Of course, free breakfast is involved, and a very nice breakfast, and of course that's a draw for any college student, as it should be. But really what the draw is here, in my opinion, is the simple fact that, as you mentioned, the ability to network with some of these individuals that you legitimately could take up on an internship or maybe even a career position. So even though, like I said, we did mention the Business Partner of the Year breakfast in a previous podcast, but we certainly couldn't have a discussion about June events without talking about that. Well, Adrienne, it is about that time again where we get to everyone's favorite segment, Adrienne's Featured 3. So, Adrienne, what is the number one event for the month of June?
I love it. Lots of great stuff happening in June. I have to give a shout out to this first event. It is a collaboration between multiple clubs that have come together on June the 1st. So go to the Clubs and Athletics Banquet during lunchtime, and then afterward in the evening, you are going to come to this pool carnival block party adventure that is being planned. It's going to be a blast. It's from 4 to 8. It's going to be in the quad, and it's going to involve a lot. I believe Darren might be telling us a little bit about it.
Darren, can you tell us a little bit more about this event?
I know that there will be the Hungry Hippos inflated. So is that like a bouncy house?
Have you been in there? Have you been in the Hungry Hippos yet?
No, I have not.
Okay, so here's the deal. It's a big inflatable, right? And I mean, the old game, right, where the hippos come in and they try to eat the whatever the little balls were in the center. So picture that, but just with real people. So you're bungee corded to like the wall, so you can only jump so far, but you have to try to jump in this like basket in the middle to like grab the balls. It's a competition, and it's so much fun.
That sounds amazing.
That sounds fun. There'll also be grilled food there. So what, like hot dogs, hamburgers,
chips, soda, that kind of stuff.
There'll also be popcorn, snow cones. The Colleges Against Cancer will also be offering Rita's water ice to the students to pay for and stuff like that.
I haven't heard flavors yet, but there's some fun ones.
The pool will be open. That's one big thing that a lot of students have been waiting for. Like, when is the pool going to open? When is the pool going to open? It's going to be open for you guys to, have fun.
Everybody knows, Darren, the pool opens on Memorial Day.
That is tradition.
And there also will be DJ'd by DJ Bub.
Yep, DJ Bub's going to be doing some music for us, and it's going to be a really fun time.
That event is coming up on Thursday, June the 1st, right after the Clubs and Activities Banquet. It'll be from 4 to 8. Adrienne, what's event number 2?
Okay, number 2, the following night. Let me tell you, the Activities Advisory Board has been really hard at work this term. They have some new ideas for ATEC Dance. I mean, ATEC Dance always is a big popular night here on campus. But this term is going to be a little bit different. They are adding casino games. So picture mocktails when you walk in. You're going to be all like feeling James Bondish, right? You're going to walk in. There's going to be music as always. And then an added bonus, there's going to be casino games in the room as well. So it's going to feel like you're really like at a casino.
Let me ask you a question about a traditional casino night. I hear about casino night fundraisers happening all the time, and I've never actually been to one. Can you share a little bit with, obviously, real gambling is illegal. Can you just give us an idea about how the casino games are played in a more for fun atmosphere?
Yeah, so they play the games with, like, basically funny money, like, just for fun. And they can earn, usually we have prizes and, like, gift cards and things like that they can win.
So if you do really well, you can earn some funny money and add to your bankroll, and then before you leave, you can stop by and pick up a gift card potentially.
Absolutely.
That's excellent. That makes a lot more sense. So Adrienne, about the casino night, this is also part of the ATEC Dance. Is the casino night and the ATEC Dance going to be running at the same time?
Yes. So you're going to walk into the conference center where everything is held. The pre-conference area is going to have your mocktails and everything. And then when you walk into the conference center itself, it's going to have the DJ, the music, as well as the games, all in the same space.
That sounds like a fantastic event.
We're asking everybody dressed to kill. Be ready to kill. Yeah.
Well, that seems, that doesn't like it's different. And I think that's more, I will definitely want to go because I know what people were just saying, like, what's, what else is there? Because y'all do this every term, I notice. So it's good that y'all changed it.
All right, Adrienne, we're coming up to our final event of Adrienne's Featured 3. What do you have?
So my final event to share is another tradition for every term, the Cram Jam. So this happens the week before finals, like the Sunday night before finals week, and it is overnight. We usually kick it off around 7 p.m. on Sunday, and then we go until the wee hours of morning on Monday. And just all kinds of activities throughout the evening. The Activities Advisory Board takes a really close hand in planning those activities. We've done things, they're still working on this terms, but we've done things like Uno tournaments and movie nights and games and Zumba and midnight pizza and I'm trying to think of what, just everything.
Well, movies you've done too.
Mm-hmm. We're usually I think we're going to do a really cool make one, take one, like wall art kind of project with melted crayons. Mm-hmm. So they did help to pick that out. So all kinds of neat stuff.
Darren, you had mentioned that you'd been to a Cram Jam previously. Can you just tell us what the sort of the attitude is and maybe what some of the people are thinking about the Cram Jam and maybe how long did you make it when you went to Cram Jam?
Well, I went to Cram Jam in the fall term. That was my first term. So basically, I didn't know what it was about. So I was like, yo, come to Cram Jam. I was like, all right, so I came. And it was just a lot of people just together, playing the game. We played the Uno tournament. I thought it was fun. I didn't stay long. I mean, when I get tired, I have to go back. I have to go home. But
Darren, this old lady makes it all the way to the morning. So you need to
step your game up. Drink some coffee.
I'm gonna try. But all in all, it was fun. It reminded me, it's like it gives you the college experience. I felt like I was really in college at that point.
And the interesting thing about this too is I really do think, and I think this, and correct me if I'm wrong or elaborate if you like, I think that this idea is an awesome idea because it really gives people a time to relax before finals week. Mm-hmm. Finals, week 10, week 11 at Central Penn College, every term, always so stressful between the different projects you have to work on, between the finals coming up, all the things you have to do, presentations to prepare for. This gives you an opportunity to just take a step back, have some fun with your friends. Yeah, maybe you stay up a little bit late, but hey, you can sleep in Monday. Mm-hmm. And I honestly think that it's something that all of our students really look forward to. Where did you I don't know if we've ever asked you this, Adrienne. Where did you come up with this idea?
You know, to be honest, we had tried it once at a former institution that I was at. It was commuter college, so it was set up a little bit different. But when I got here and we came into student service, I remember going into Dalton's office. He was down the hall in the writing center. I'm like, hey, what do you think about trying to do this like overnight thing? It kind of went from there.
How many students or what are the number of students who make it till the 5 a.m. threshold?
Oh my goodness. Every term's a little bit different. I think the most, one year, I think we might have had close to 20 the 1 year. We've
so
also had as low as like 5 or 6.
Well, I mean, even those 5 or 6, they're troopers, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So let's just recap Adrienne's featured 3. Of course, earlier we talked about the Clubs and Activities Banquet that's going to be on June 1st and the Business Partner of the Year Breakfast that's going to be on June the 7th. For sign-up information for the Clubs and Activities Banquet, you can email Adrienne Thoman or you can stop in her office. As far as the Business Partner of the Year Breakfast, you can RSVP to Rabina Azizdan, and more information about that is on our previous podcast. As far as Adrienne's featured 3, we're going to start off with the Colleges Against Cancer Fashion Club and AAB pool party, block party, cookout, DJ on June 1st. That's going to be from 4 to 8 in the Quad. The second event is the very next night, June 2nd, the ATEC Dance and Casino Night. And finally, the Cram Jam, which begins on June 18th into June 19th from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. So, Adrienne, it looks like we've got a wonderful full slate of events coming up here in June.
I appreciate that. We're trying to keep everybody busy, give you guys lots of fun things to do here in the last month of the term.
And Darren, thank you very much for your insight on some of the events and some of the, your own personal feelings on some of these things. And we certainly hope to have you back the next time with Adrienne.
Yep.
All right. So for Media Club correspondent Darren Green, we're also joined by Adrienne Thoman, Student Activities Director. And this is Professor Paul Miller signing off for the Nightly News. Welcome back to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller here joining you today. So fortunate to be joined by Jon Butchar, former senior Deputy Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania. So, Jon, thank you so very much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
So tell us a little bit, before we get into some of the subjects that we're going to talk about, tell us a little bit, Deputy Attorney General, what's that even mean?
Well, when you're an attorney and are hired by the Attorney General's office, that is your title. There are various levels of Attorney General, culminating in becoming a senior Deputy Attorney General after you've been there a long time. So that's where I retired, as a senior Deputy Attorney General.
Now, I've talked to you personally, and you've actually come into my class before and talked a little bit more about your job, so I kind of know this, but just to sort of update our listeners, can you talk about some of the types of cases that you were really responsible for arguing?
Well, at the Attorney General's office, I worked in a very specific area of taxation, Pennsylvania taxation, and I handled all the many of the large corporate tax cases and the insurance taxes and gross receipts taxes, which are utilities, et cetera. So a lot of taxes that in our daily lives we don't come across. That's what I handled litigating in the Commonwealth Court and in the PA Supreme Court.
So you spent a lot of time inside the PA Supreme Court.
Yes.
So you would obviously have a lot of knowledge about not only the way that state government runs, but also to a larger perspective, maybe the way the federal government runs to a certain point?
Well, certainly some background there, and I stay up with what's going on, so it sort of keeps me informed and interested in what's happening.
And one of the reasons that you're here today, obviously, you've like I said, worked with our classes. You're very interested in what we're doing here in the podcast. And you said earlier, this is actually your first podcast.
That's correct.
And so we're very pleased that you took time out of your day to do this. But really what we're having Jon on, and this is going to be part of a 2-part series, is to talk about some of the things involved with politics to try to educate some of our students from somebody that's a little bit more of an insider than maybe some of the people on political news stations who may have a similar agenda. So I'm hoping that your knowledge here is going to be informative, but also helpful to students.
Well, I know you're obviously involved in communications. And one of the disappointing things I find today is that most people get their news from little sound bites and determine their opinions and their candidates based on little snippets of things they hear without doing any research on the candidates' backgrounds.
We talk a lot in some of the communications classes about how millennials are part of what we call a clip culture. And I noticed this a lot in class. Whereas, I don't know, maybe when I was coming up in college, a professor would show a film, maybe a documentary or maybe a longer portion of a film, maybe 40 minutes worth of class time. We can't really do that today because, unfortunately, a lot of our students lack the attention span. So we're giving them quick hits. So if I show a video in class, I usually don't make it longer than about 4 or 5 minutes. And it's because of this notion that as we get more technologically advanced, we have a shorter attention span because we're dealing with and multitasking with so many different things. So I do agree with you and concur with you that, especially with something like Twitter, where everything is 140 characters, I will personally admit that I get some of my news. Now, of course, I'll click through if I see an interesting tweet, but I get most of my news from Twitter. And if you don't follow up with that and all you're doing is reading the tweets, then that can have a serious repercussion on the amount and depth of knowledge that you have about a specific topic. So I really appreciate your commentary on that.
Well, I think the written word, and not in the tweets, but the written word as in large articles, is still the most informative, the least biased, contributes the most information for your decision-making process. So those in my generation still, like Time Magazine and major newspapers and things like that, find that is really where we learn really what's going on. You get such a little snippet of it on a tweet or, on some other type of social media clip that it's often you're left with just such a small part of knowledge that it's hard to really determine what to do with that.
And to your point, wouldn't a shorter clip then have a much higher and much greater potential of being biased?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. I think that is a big part of the problem today. When you read, when you see a news article look at it on the computer, for example, and you see the follow-up tweets, you can tell from the people tweeting in response to that how knowledgeable or unknowledgeable they are, really.
Well, obviously, we've had a lot of issues with things like that in the news. We now fake news, which a lot of people think is a new phenomenon. Fake news has been going on since the creation of news. I mean, there's always news outlets that have specific agendas. Some do a little bit better job of hiding it than maybe others do. Certainly, larger news organizations leave a lot of that type of thing for the opinion page. And that's really what the role of journalism is. But to be honest with you, now we're in a day and age where anybody can produce their own news. Anybody has access to a blog or their own Twitter account. They can basically say whatever they want and don't have to abide by the canons of journalism, which is journalists' ethical code. And that's problematic to me. And I think that the further and further we go on, the more and more we're going to see. And one of the things, the challenges I have is trying to educate the students what is a reliable source and how we should evaluate some of the news sources that we see. Because in today's day and age with the alt-left and alt-right publications out there, a lot of people don't realize how unbelievably biased they are.
Oh, I think that's absolutely correct. What I find today is the total reliance on clips and on modern technology that we have really erodes our ability to discuss the issues in depth. In a prior generation, my generation was at the start of television. And what I found was when I was growing up, there were only a few news organizations. They were, in general, very, very much straightforward. You could believe what Walter Cronkite was telling you because that was his core, was to bring the information, the facts, the knowledge to the American people. Today, not so much, depending on what network or what you're watching. The other thing that I think is hugely different today is in my generation and prior to that, people sat around and discussed politics. They sat around and discussed world events. There was an exchange of ideas where people really learned from each other and paused and thought about how they viewed things. And that carried on much more so, say, in Europe, where you still have the cafe society on the streets of cities where people sit and gather and do that kind of stuff. And that's long lost here in America, unfortunately.
Even as recent as our last election, there was such an outcry from the amount of people who unfriended or unfollowed people in their friends, maybe even relatives, on their social media channels because they didn't agree with what they were saying. This is actually very problematic, and there's been a lot of study on this, something called the social media echo chamber. And it talks about how if you only read the information that you want to see, that you are only exposed to one side of the story, that you now become more aggressive and more, instead of being maybe a centrist, where a couple decades ago almost every American was somewhere in the middle, maybe a little left, maybe a little right. Now we're exploding to being more aggressive and being more adamant about our positions on things. And I think that it's something that social media really needs to take a look at, and especially because a lot of the fake news is being distributed via social media. So social media does play a role, in my opinion.
I absolutely agree. I think when you look at, as I said, prior generations, you didn't have computers, you didn't have social media. People still had normal discourse. You could disagree with someone, but you had a discourse and you respected their ideas. And that was the same and true in Congress. As you mentioned, both sides were almost in the middle, a little left, a little right. But the dominant theme in running for election was how to make America better, to sort of semi-borrow a phrase here. And it was heartfelt, and it was true. And most Republicans and most Democrats on both sides, their goal was to do what was best for the country. And that was a prevailing, up until the last 30 years, that was really the prevailing sentiment in our legislatures, at the state level, at the federal level. And now so many candidates run on one issue. It's a hot button issue. They happen to know that where their particular group of people, where their voters lie on that issue, and that's what they pander to. And does it make for good government? It does not.
You know, one of the things, too, that I wanted to talk about with you here is really, obviously, we're on a college campus. I've worked with a gentleman by the name of Dylan Epler last election to try to create some opportunity for students to either do an absentee ballot if they're from out of the area, or to provide them with transportation to the polls. One of the things in my media and politics class, the one that you had a part of, and really one of the themes of the entire course from my perspective is just to get people to understand how important it is to vote. You know, I said this phrase many times, and anyone who is in my class will probably get sick of hearing me say this, but I don't care who you vote for. I care that you vote. And I always gave the line that how many people died? I mean, who even knows how many people died for the right to vote? I mean, I don't even think we can even calculate such a number. And for, I think, a lot of our younger generations to just sort of be indifferent with it because they don't expose themselves to the importance of getting out to vote. I really just hope that, Donald Trump's issues throughout his first, couple months of his campaign show you really why it is so important to get out there and vote, but not even just in a presidential election. I mean, John, I was just reading the other day that our midterm election, not the midterm election, our election of earlier in the week, the primaries, was one of the most low-attended elections in history.
I think in some areas the turnout was 8 to 12%. Think about that. So 92% of Americans, or people in those precincts, didn't bother. Now, in some cases in this area, you have strong sort of single-party areas. There's really not a choice if people like to say, I'm going to re-vote for that guy for a local office anyway. Yeah, maybe it doesn't make a difference. But we saw in the last election how few votes can turn even a national election. Just in a few key states, less than 100,000 votes out of 120 million cast, made the difference in the last election. And that may have been partly due to the late release of on the emails like Clinton or other factors that we can get into at some other time. But truly, every vote does count.
And I just hope that I'm able to help some of the students out there, sort of maybe inspire them to vote a little bit. But can you just give us a quick sentence or two on why it's so important for students at the college age to not only just vote, but to take the time to do some research? It's one thing to vote, and it's your right, and I suppose you can do whatever you want, but tell me a little bit more about why it's important for our students, at the college age to be involved with the political process.
Well, quite frankly, America is not real well educated today. And we look to the colleges to provide some relief from that situation we're in. We'd like to see colleges be a sort of a safe zone for discussing all ideas and for getting out there and understanding, coming to an understanding that maybe some of the things you thought because your parents thought that way or other way may or may not comport with your values. We hear little snippets of things. One topic, for example, is let's say Planned Parenthood. And the right wing ran very often on the platform of let's stop federal funding to Planned Parenthood because that'll stop the horror of abortions. Well, there've always been abortions. Only back when I was young, they were unsafe. They were illegal. They were done in back rooms. They were done by unqualified doctors or non-doctors, and women died. And, women finally got the right to control their own bodies. I mean, when I was young, you couldn't use contraception without your partner's agreement if you were a woman. There was a U.S. Supreme Court case, Griswold v. Connecticut. But that's how the world has changed. And when people think, they hear Planned Parenthood, that equals abortion. Well, no, it doesn't. Planned Parenthood happens to provide the only health care for several million Americans, even men, and is the leading provider of contraception and teaching people about contraception. And that actually prevents abortions. So while they are a provider in many areas that do provide for abortions, they also prevent a lot of abortions that would otherwise take place. And what people should also know, and this seemed to have been lost, is not a single dollar of federal funds goes toward performing an abortion. There's already laws on the books. Federal funding toward Planned Parenthood and other health organizations that are out there serving the public on health needs, that the funding goes to that side of it. So if your opposition is to abortion, understand that the federal government does not support that through Planned Parenthood. They're supporting the health care feature of Planned Parenthood.
You give just one great example of how important it is to know the whole story. And I guess what I'm hoping here is a little bit of more discussion about some of these things that we're going to chat about today. We're going to do it from an objective perspective. We're not trying to influence here. We're simply trying to give information and simply information that either goes uncovered in the media, which I know in today's day and age is hard to believe, or covered maybe by some very outlandish people who maybe don't have the information that they need or have the training in journalism to be able to report on such a story. But just to sum up, we both really hope that our students start using some of this dialogue that we're having today as a means to get into at least keeping up with what's going on with our current presidential administration, but not just our national representatives, but also our state and local officials as well.
Well, quite frankly, the government starts at home, and it starts with your local officials. Everybody should attend if you have county, township supervisors, if you have a mayor, whatever your form of government is in your area, show up at some of those meetings. See how the decisions are made. Those are the ones that impact you on the most local level, and you can have great impact on those. You can change those decisions just by voicing opinion because nobody shows up.
And social media has actually been a way to help people get to some of these because, in fact, I'm a Mechanicsburg borough resident. They have all the city council meetings right on their Facebook page.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, so I think borough council meetings. I think it's fantastic, and I've watched a few of those, and it's really helped me understand a lot more about how local government works.
Jon Butchar will be back with us on a future Nightly News podcast, but until then, this is Professor Paul Miller signing off.